Back in 2007, I remember I did this big study on fertilizer prices, and for many years, you were going to find a seasonal low in July and August, and prices roughly were going to go up 10 to even 25% on average from then until spring, depending on whether you were buying nitrogen, which always went up the most, or potassium, which went up the least. Well, you know what? In the last couple years, things have gotten totally out of kilter, and we've had prices go way down in the spring. We've had prices go way up in the spring. It's really varied depending on the year, in part because we had that $7 corn thing, and so all
you get
these
expensive crops, and also you get the value of our U.S. dollar change.
And the oil price changed a lot too. So all these factors enter into things. So we can't stand here today and tell you right now for sure is absolutely the best time to buy fertilizer. But we do know that on average, now is a pretty good time.
Well, you have to think about it this way. When is the best time to buy anything out of season? If you want to buy a winter coat, the best time to buy it is in the summer or in the spring because, frankly, places are just willing to get rid of them for the lowest price possible just to get it out the door. And with fertilizer, that's where we're at. We aren't really using that fertilizer right now unless you're going to be planting a fall crop. We're probably going to need that fertilizer later on, maybe October and November, something like that in our corn and soybean rotation. So guys say, well, wait a minute, I got to bring all this fertilizer in. I got to move all this fertilizer through my facility. I need to get some out the door now, so I better cut some deals to make sure I make that happen.
Okay, so let's talk a little about some of the things you'll run into buying fertilizer today. If you're going to go pricing around, what you're going to find is most likely two different prices. One, if somebody's going to hold the product for you till fall or even till spring, that's definitely a possibility. You might be able to get a better deal and you don't even have to take the fertilizer till later in the fall or in the spring. But the other side of things is if you actually take it now. And let's talk a little about the regulations you're going to run into if you take a liquid product or if you take a dry product right now.
Okay, well, if you're going to take product now, you have to have some place to store it. So if you're taking a dry product, you have to find some place where you can keep it dry, or if you have a liquid product, you're going to need a tank for sure. And once you start piling up fertilizer or putting tanks on your place, you're going to be subject to regulations that vary greatly depending on where you're at. So you need to think about that and be aware of what those regulations are before you lock yourself into storing fertilizer.
Okay, well, there's one side of things, it's the regulation side. The other side is being good stewards of the environment. And what we're talking about here is even if in your state or in your county you're not required to have containment, if you're going to store liquid product for a long period of time, you want to have some bulk containment there. So what the general rule is if you're under roof, you want to have at least 10% more capacity than the biggest tank in your particular dike. So in other words, if your tank was a 1,000-gallon tank, for example, you'd have to have a containment facility that would hold at least 1,100, if not even 1,200 gallons, just to be on the safe side.
So whether that's metal or concrete or some way of containing that, because you just never know what can happen. Now you say, wait a minute, I've had fertilizer for 30 years, I've never had a problem. Well, just in my hometown, there was a local fertilizer dealer that, thank goodness, he had containment because we had some straight line over 100-mile-an-hour winds, and it knocks the tank over, and it's all contained. It's no big deal to clean it up. Yeah, there's some wreckage and so forth and insurance to deal with, but you can clean it right up when you've got containment.
Now, another thing that we talk about a lot on Ag PhD is doing jobs yourself that will pay you $100 an hour or more. And I can just tell you that we spread our own fertilizer on our farm. And the reason why we do it is because we're making over $100 an hour on average in savings every year because we do the work ourselves, because we buy the product basically on the wholesale market and have it shipped right into our farm. Now, if you're going to do that, that's great and everything, but you need to talk about that expense side of things, and that's where a lot of people say, oh no, I'm gonna have to buy some tanks, or I'm gonna have to buy a fertilizer spreader, or maybe I have to set up for bulk containment. You know, those things don't cost a lot of money, like the containment issue. So we just mentioned containment. You say, oh, that sounds like a big project. We pour some cement ourselves, we can do metal work ourselves. No real big deal. It does not cost very much money. Heck, even if you hire somebody to come in and do it, it's not that expensive to set up some containment. And like Darren said, if you ever do have a problem, you'll be so thankful that you did have that containment.
Well, think about where it is. For most of us, it's on the farm that you live on.
Yep.
And wow.
And you're drinking out of a well.
The last place you want to contaminate is where your family is and where your drinking water comes from. So you do need to have some common sense and take care of those things.
Well, once again, we would encourage you to take a look at buying your fertilizer right now for next year. We don't know for sure that it's going to be cheaper now than it will be next year, but typically we have seasonal lows right now. So take a strong look at that, run the numbers on your farm, and I can just tell you on our own farm, we're going to be starting to buy fertilizer any day here.
But make sure you save a little bit of money in the budget for controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week. It's a really tough one. We'll show you how to get it under control coming up next.